So before we really start to get into this, I need to explain a little bit. These next two concepts that we covered, photosynthesis and respiration, are two what we call chemical reactions that take place within cells. A chemical reaction is when you take certain molecules and rearrange them to form new materials. And that's what's going on in both photosynthesis and respiration. So we have, when we're talking about a chemical reaction, we sometimes will make what we call an equation. And this is going to be filled in with the chemical equation for photosynthesis, and this one will be filled in with the chemical equation for respiration. Okay. So when you have a chemical equation like this, you have the things on the left side of the arrow are sort of what you need in order for this reaction to take place. The stuff on the right side of the arrow is what you produce, okay, in this chemical reaction. So we'll start today and just talk about photosynthesis. So you guys, I know, have learned about photosynthesis before. And so this was our question. I guess we didn't really go over it, did we?
No.
So what is, so in your own words, like what is photosynthesis? Yeah?
It's how plants make food.
It's how plants make food. That's one way to say it. Sophia, what were you going to say?
Same thing.
Same exact thing.
I
Jenna?
was going to say each plant's turning sun's energy into food.
Okay, so Jenna added something about the sun's energy in there as well. Robert?
I was gonna say the
Same
same thing.
thing?
And I said it's how they make food.
Okay, so you're right. And like probably in elementary school when you learned about photosynthesis, what you learned is that plants need sunlight and they make food. We're going to go into more detail than that and talk about exactly what the plants need, exactly what they produce. What does it mean when we say they produce food? That's what we're going to get into those details here today. And so photosynthesis is a process. Those things you said aren't wrong, but we're going to sort of make it a little more specific. And Jenna said, what is required, Jenna?
The sun's energy.
Jenna brought in sunlight. Okay. Photosynthesis requires sunlight in order for the reaction to take place. Okay. And so we're going to start filling in this equation. And this little explosion kind of box represents like energy. And the type of energy needed in photosynthesis is sunlight. Now, really, we could just say light in general because you can grow plants with artificial light. It doesn't have to technically be sunlight, but plants need light in order to go through this process of photosynthesis. So they need light, but they need two other substances in order for photosynthesis to actually work. So if you imagine plants and plants that are growing, they use photosynthesis to make food and it helps them to grow larger. Michael, what else do they need?
Water.
They need water. Okay. How do plants get water? How do plants actually get water? Zach?
Soil.
They get it from the soil. What do plants have that helps them absorb water from the soil? Okay? Roots. Plants absorb water in through their roots, and that's how they get the water that they need. Now, you guys know this. So instead of writing the word water, what did I put there? What exactly does that mean? Does anybody know? So I'm sure you know H2O is a symbol for water, but what exactly does that symbol tell us? Nigella? Yeah, it tells us actually which elements make up water. Water is a molecule, it's a compound. And water is made of two atoms of the element hydrogen bonded, connected sort of, to one atom of oxygen. That's what a water molecule is, H2O. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen bound together. That's called a chemical symbol. So we need sunlight, we need water. I should say plants need sunlight and water. And then one other substance that's important. Sophia?
Air.
Very close, but not just air in general, because air is really, dozens of different gases mixed together. Plants need one specific gas from the air.
Oxygen.
No. That's what most people would say.
Carbon dioxide.
Yes. So they need a gas that's in the atmosphere, that's in the air. It's called carbon dioxide. Can you guess maybe the symbols it has in it? What do you think the symbol for carbon would be? C. Oxygen? O. CO2 is the symbol for carbon dioxide. Di means 2. So carbon dioxide is 2 oxygen atoms bonded to a single carbon atom. So that's what plants need for photosynthesis. They need light from the sun, they need water from the soil, and they need carbon dioxide from the air. If all of those things are present, then photosynthesis can happen. That's kind of what this arrow means. We say yields, okay, produces sometimes. So if we have light, water, and carbon dioxide, that yields or produces 2 things. And you guys told me at the beginning of class, photosynthesis is how plants make food. And that's sort of talking about, what do we mean by food? What do they make? Veggie burgers and falafel patties and pita bread? No. They make a very specific molecule. You know what it is, Jenna?
Glucose?
They make a type of sugar called glucose. Okay? Glucose has a little bit of a more complex chemical symbol, and it's C6H12O6. C6H12O6. That's the symbol for glucose. So glucose is made of 3 elements. Who could tell me which elements it's made out of? Brandon?
Carbon,
Yep. Yep.
oxygen, and hydrogen.
Yeah, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's what it's made out of. In this case, it's a little bit of a bigger molecule because it has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms all bound together. But you'll notice carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, where did they come from?
We come to H2O.
Yeah, the carbon came from the carbon dioxide. The hydrogen and oxygen came from the water and the carbon dioxide. So we have all the same elements. We're just kind of rearranging them in a different way to make a larger molecule called glucose. When we say plants make their own food, that's what we really mean. Plants make glucose. That's what they use as their food source, as their energy source, this glucose. Sophia?
Do you need to know the symbols really fast?
Yeah, you should know the symbols or recognize the symbols for your quiz. And that's really the only hard one. So, we have light, we have water, we have carbon dioxide. We rearrange those atoms, or we don't, but plants do. And they form glucose, their food, and one other sort of waste product, byproduct, that they release, another gas. It's oxygen, O2. Light, water, carbon dioxide yields glucose and oxygen. When we're writing a chemical equation like this, the materials on the left side of the arrow, we call those the reactants. Kind of like the raw materials, the ingredients that you need. And then the stuff on the other side of the arrow, the things that are made, we call that the products. They're produced by this reaction. reactants on the left, the products on the right. And so the ultimate goal of photosynthesis is for plants to produce their own glucose, their own food. Now remind me, where in a plant cell, this happens in plant cells, in this geranium right here, these leaves of the geranium, made of cells. In those cells there are many what? What organelle? Great? There's many chloroplasts in these cells of the leaves. Okay. Those chloroplasts have a pigment called chlorophyll in them that makes them green. That's the molecule that captures the sun's energy. They're also taking in water from the soil. They're taking in carbon dioxide from the air around it, combining all those things, producing glucose, and that's how this plant is growing larger. It's how it's getting the food that it needs to grow by this process called photosynthesis. Okay. So any questions about photosynthesis? You will have to know the equation, okay, which things go in there, their symbols. Now the order here is not really that important. I could have said carbon dioxide plus water plus light yields glucose and oxygen. I could have said yields oxygen and glucose. So it doesn't matter sort of the order of these two or the order of these three, as long as you have them on the proper side of the arrow, then you're fine. You also will need to know which side of the arrow are the reactants and which side of the arrow are the products. Now, we'll get to respiration tomorrow. I'm not going to cover it right now. But it's very similar in a lot of ways to photosynthesis. And we'll talk about why tomorrow. But for now, we're going to stop with photosynthesis, digest that a little bit, and then we'll move on tomorrow to talk about respiration. Okay. Sophia?
How many questions